Welcome back to Landmarks Discovered. In this episode, we'll visit the recently revitalized Lake Drive Park and learn about the history of the Royal Park Bridge. In doing this episode on Lake Drive Park, we also have the opportunity to talk about the Royal Park Bridge Historic District. In the town of Palm Beach, as you know, there are 3 bridges connecting the town to the city of West Palm Beach. Each of those bridges are owned by the state, and in landmarking them, which the town has done in all 3 cases, the town is given purview over the design. The Royal Park Bridge, or as it's more commonly known as the Middle Bridge, has been in place for roughly a decade. But there's actually an interesting history that precedes this 4th iteration of the bridge in that location. Katie, can you share what you've turned up in your research?
So the Royal Park Bridge was actually a privately owned toll bridge when it was built back in 1910 by Cap E.N. Dimick. The grand opening of the bridge happened in 1911, which was also the same date when the town was incorporated. And as we know, Cap Ian Dimick was the first mayor of the town of Palm Beach. So he has a huge connection to this area, and you can actually see his statue in the middle of Royal Palm Way.
And so that original bridge was a wood bridge.
Yes, and there's actually a really interesting postcard of the bridge itself because it has all these scary animals for Florida, so alligators and bears that were present in the design of it. So it's really interesting.
Oh, that's so interesting. Beware, you're crossing into the wilderness from the city of West Palm Beach.
And it was the first bridge you could cross over as a pedestrian or a car because the only way to get on the island back in the day was either by boat or through the railroad bridge, which dropped you in front of the Royal Poinciana Hotel. So this bridge was really a different location, and it came before Meisner was here. So Worth Avenue, none of that was developed. It was still jungle trail. And Cap Ian Dimick and his partners decided, we want more land for homes and such. So they platted the Royal Park Addition, which consists of the streets from Royal Palm Way to Chilean Avenue. Before this bridge, the main form of transportation on the island was walking bicycles or the Palm Beach wheelchairs,
which I think are so iconic when you see old postcards of Lake Trail.
And that, of course, was the main road for such a long time.
And another interesting thing that we found out was, as Katie mentioned, it was a toll bridge, and so it was 25 cents per car, and that also included the driver, but if you had additional passengers, each person was 5 cents each. And then in the 1920s, the county actually purchased the bridge from Dimick and his partners, his business partners, and set about constructing a new concrete bridge. However, that didn't go so well.
No, it actually collapsed 2 days before its grand opening. I want to say in the early 20s. And they were like, okay, we have to start all over again. And then that is the 3rd iteration of the bridge that lasted for a very long time till it was redone in the 2000s.
So they got it right the second time around.
Exactly. So there's been 4 iterations of this bridge for people to come across to the island. This entrance to the island was so important that it was called out in the 1930 Plan of Palm Beach that was commissioned by the Garden Club to really be the showcase entrance to the town of Palm Beach. So in actuality, we really have the Garden Club to thank for how the entrance looks today with the 4 rows of royal palms. And what's interesting too, in that plan, they also call out that the land between Royal Palm Way and Worth Avenue should be a park.
And that brings us to Lake Drive Park. So in addition to creating historic districts that protect all of the bridges to the town as scenic vistas, the land surrounding these areas is also designated and included in those historic districts. And so Lake Park is a landmark park within the town of Palm Beach. The town of Palm Beach recently completed a major capital improvement project at the town's marina and docks. We had a chance to sit down with Keith Williams from Nievera Williams to discuss the park's transformation and the public-private partnership that made it possible.
It's interesting, actually, how this whole project started for us. I got a phone call driving home from Miami one day from a friend of mine and a designer, Scott Snyder, who said, "I have a big favor to ask of you." And I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "Will you work with us on the park? I'm putting together a team. I've got a lot of clients who want to raise money for the park." And I said, in about 2 seconds, yes, I would love to help you out. We're involved 100%. I've worked on the island for 25, 26 years. And I feel like that our firm is part of the fabric of the island and that we would do anything for the island, especially when it comes to restoring or revitalizing a park like this that's so important. There was 2 challenges. The first challenge that was unique to the site is that we were way behind on this project. I think we had about a little less than 6 months to actually get drawings done, do presentations. It may have been 8 months or so, but we were way behind, and there was a lot of design work that was done prior to us getting on board. So catching up with all the other engineers, the designers, the construction team, that was intense, very intense. The second phase that was a little more challenging was the location of the park and the fact that it aligns a street with hundreds of residents. And for this park, that's their front yard, that's their garden, right? So as soon as you touch it, you're affecting them in many different ways. We learned that very quickly. And then just not the people that live on the street. There's associations that are involved that support, the town of Palm Beach and parks like this, and they get involved. And then of course you have, the towns, the landmarks, the town council, even ARCOM involved. And then people forget, but there's people on boats here. They're coming in from all over the world, so they're involved as well. So trying to get all those people together on the same page is extremely challenging. Another big challenge that we overcame was the asphalt. This park was riddled with asphalt. Originally this park was a grass, a seawall, and asphalt, and a few royal palms. The most boring thing you could ever imagine. The beautiful thing were the boats and the people that would come in and out. But everyone, deserves something beautiful, so we redesigned it. We worked with some of the existing materials. We were able to get the permeable pavers passed, which I think adds a lot to the park. Reduce quite a bit of asphalt and incorporate, crushed coral and gravels. Under the banyan trees originally it was mud and mulch, and we were fighting for gravel, and that was like a last minute approval. Most of them were royal palms. Some of them were diseased. People didn't realize that, and they weren't doing so well. So we kind of removed most of those and started replacing them with coconut palms, which I think lend themselves to the lake trail. In fact, one of my original visions of the lake trail was the old photographs of the coconut palms and the carriages and the people, on the lake trail, riding the carriage down the dirt road. And that's what I presented as an original inspirational photo. So we wanted to incorporate more of those trees, lose the royal palms. But there's orchid trees, silk frost trees, and of course, several amazing Ficus altissima trees that have been here for 80 to 100 years. Obviously, the use of native materials and sustainability was a huge factor in the design, and that was applauded and appreciated throughout the whole process. The use of native species has been something we've been working on for a long time. I know that we've been in front of the boards and the preservation with the whole percentages and back and forth, but we do love using natives for many reasons. I think there's a little bit of a myth that natives don't require as much maintenance. I don't think that's necessarily true, having a native garden myself, but it does require less chemicals, which is really important. But more importantly, it brings in bees and butterflies, and birds you probably will never see unless you have specific plants. So we wanted to incorporate those materials or those species of plants into this park and see more birds and butterflies. We typically design with sense of order. I like to say organized chaos. When I'm designing a garden, someone asks, well, how do you design a garden? And it's organized, but there's chaos. So for instance, massing together large groups of grasses, their identity is not messed up by other material, but they're flowing and they're draping over and they're big pillowy mounds of plants. And I don't want to disturb that by adding something else. So that's organized in a way. And then just separating the species. I would say the most rewarding part of the park is watching people enjoy the park, watching people sit on the seawall, seeing the boats come in offshore, playing with their dogs, laying in the lawn, having picnics, riding bikes, exercising, just seeing the gardens function and support the people who use them, and the people who use them support the parks.
Whereas Pan's Garden was designed to demonstrate different habitats in South Florida, Lake Drive Park was designed by Nievera Williams as an extension of their design philosophy. The same species are grouped together in a way that complements many of the horticultural traditions of the island. And for that reason, the Preservation Foundation is delighted to recognize Nievera Williams and the town of Palm Beach with the 2023 Leslie S. Smith Landscape Award. Thank you for joining us for Landmarks Discovered. We look forward to seeing you next time when we visit another landmark in the town of Palm Beach.